Maya Chen's hand trembled as she held the corporate credit card between her fingers, the black metal surface reflecting the chandelier light of the Grand Harbor Club's private dining room. 12 years serving tables in Seattle, and she'd never seen a card that heavy. She'd never seen a bill that large either, $47,000 for a single dinner. "Problem, sweetheart." The voice came from the head of the table. Richard Castellano, tech billionaire, 42 years old. Forbes estimated his net worth at $8.3 billion. Maya had looked him up after the reservation came through, the way she always did with big parties. His venture capital firm had offices 3 blocks from the restaurant. "No, sir, I just need to confirm the tip," he cut her off, leaning back in his chair with that specific kind of casualness that only unlimited money could buy. "You're wondering about the tip." The other 6 people at the table, all men in suits that probably cost more than her car, went quiet. Maya felt her face heat up. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows behind them, Elliott Bay stretched out black and glittering, their ferries crossing like slow-moving stars. "I added 20%, Castellano continued, his voice carrying that particular tone wealthy people used when they wanted you to know they were being generous. "That's $9,400 for 3 hours of work." He paused. "That's more than you make in 3 months, right?" Maya's jaw tightened. She was 28 years old. She'd been supporting her younger brother through community college since their mother died. She knew exactly what she made in 3 months. "Thank you, Mr. Castellano. I'll process this right away." "Wait." He held up one hand. Diamond cufflinks caught the light. "Here's what I don't understand. You work, what, 40 hours a week? Closer to 50. 50 hours at minimum wage plus tips. You probably clear, what, 35,000 a year?" Maya said nothing. It was 32, but close enough. "And you've been doing this for how long?" 12 years. One of the other men at the table let out a low whistle. Castellano smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. 12 years, he repeated. "Same restaurant?" "Yes, sir." "Do you own a house?" The question landed like a slap. "No." "Car paid off?" "Not yet." "Savings, investments, retirement fund?" Maya's fingers tightened on the card. "Mr. Castellano, I really should—" "I'm genuinely curious." He leaned forward now, elbows on the table, hands folded, the posture of someone about to deliver a lesson. "Because here's what I'm thinking. You've worked for 12 years. You've earned, conservatively, let's say, $400,000 total in that time. And you have nothing to show for it. No assets, no investments. Still renting, I assume?" "Yes." "Still living paycheck to paycheck?" Maya's throat felt tight. The other servers were watching now, pretending to clear nearby tables but clearly listening. Marco, the sous chef, had paused in the kitchen doorway. "With respect, sir, my financial situation isn't— You don't understand money." Castellano said it simply, matter-of-factly, the way you'd tell someone they don't understand quantum physics. "That's not an insult. Most people don't. They think of money as something you trade hours for, but that's not what money is. Money is a tool, a lever. You use it to make more money. You've been treating it like—" He gestured vaguely, "like water, just flowing through your hands." One of the other men chuckled. Another nodded slowly, as if Castellano had just revealed some profound truth. Maya felt something crack open inside her chest. It wasn't anger, exactly. It was something colder, sharper. "You're right," she said quietly. Castellano blinked, surprised. "I am? I don't understand your kind of money." Maya set the credit card down on the table very carefully. "I don't understand money that makes more money while you sleep. Money that buys buildings and companies and legislation. Money that moves in abstractions." She paused. "But I understand the kind of money that keeps the lights on, the kind that feeds people, The kind that decides whether my brother gets his insulin this month or whether he rations it and hopes for the best. The table had gone completely silent. "You asked about my $400,000, Maya continued, her voice steady now. $320,000 of that went to my mother's medical bills before she died. Cancer, stage 4. The insurance covered some of it. Not enough." She looked directly at Castellano. $40,000 went to my brother's education and medical expenses. He's diabetic, type 1. Do you know what insulin costs in this country, Mr. Castellano? He didn't answer. The rest went to rent, food, transportation, and keeping myself alive enough to work 50-hour weeks. Maya picked up the credit card again. "You spent $47,000 tonight on dinner, on wine I couldn't pronounce, on fish flown in from Japan, on the experience of being in a room with a view." Her hand wasn't shaking anymore. "I spent $47,000 over 3 years keeping my mother comfortable while she died. Different kinds of money, different kinds of math." She turned to walk away, then stopped. "You want to know why I have nothing to show for 12 years of work? Look at your tax returns, Mr. Castellano. Look at what you paid in capital gains versus what I paid in payroll taxes. Look at the healthcare I can't afford and the education that costs a year's salary. Look at the system that lets you write off this dinner as a business expense while I pay full price for my brother's right to stay alive." Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "You're right. I don't understand money, but you don't understand the cost of living." The silence that followed was absolute. Through the windows, a ferry horn sounded low and mournful across the water. Maya walked to the terminal, processed the card, and printed the receipt. Her hands were steady. Her mind was surprisingly clear. She brought the receipt back to the table, placed it in front of Castellano with a pen, and waited. He signed it without looking at her. "Thank you for dining with us tonight," Maya said, her voice professionally neutral. "Please let us know if you need anything else." She walked back to the service station, set down her tray, and went to the bathroom. She locked herself in a stall, sat down on the closed toilet, and put her face in her hands. She didn't cry. She was too tired to cry. Too angry. Too aware that in 10 minutes another table would be seated, and she'd need to smile and recommend the salmon and pretend that this was fine, that everything was fine, that this was just how the world worked. But her hands were still shaking. The adrenaline of the confrontation was wearing off, replaced by a creeping sense of dread. Had she just destroyed her career? The Grand Harbor Club wasn't just any restaurant. It was the kind of place where connections were made, where deals happened, where the wealthy came to see and be seen. One negative review from Richard Castellano could poison the well. One complaint to management could end everything. Maya pulled out her phone. 3 texts from co-workers she'd missed during the confrontation. From Sarah, another server, "OMG, what just happened at table 12? From Marcus, the sommelier, "Did you really just go off on Richard Castellano?" From Lisa, the hostess, "Girl, Dennis is looking for you. He does not look happy." Her phone buzzed again, a text from her brother David. "Got my schedule for spring semester. Need to talk about costs." Maya closed her eyes. The bathroom tile was cold under her feet. Somewhere in the restaurant, the piano player started another jazz standard, something soft and melancholic that rich people liked to hear while they ate. She stood up, looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were red but dry. Her uniform was still crisp. She looked exactly like she had an hour ago, but something fundamental had shifted. She'd said the truth out loud. She'd named the thing that everyone pretended not to see. There was no taking it back now. Maya straightened her uniform and walked back out to the floor. Dennis was waiting at the service station, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "My office," he said quietly. "After your shift. Dennis, after your shift. He walked away before she could respond. The rest of the night was a blur. Maya moved through her tables on autopilot, her mind replaying the confrontation over and over. The other servers gave her looks, some sympathetic, some wary, some openly admiring. One of the line cooks, Ramon, gave her a thumbs up when she went to pick up an order. "That was beautiful," he whispered. Someone needed to say it. But Preston, the sommelier who'd been there 14 years and dreamed of opening his own place, pulled her aside near the end of the shift. "You shouldn't have done that," he said, his voice low and urgent. "Do you have any idea who Richard Castellano is? The connections he has? You could have just blacklisted yourself from every upscale restaurant in the city." "I know who he is." "Then you know you just committed career suicide." Preston shook his head. "I get it. The system's unfair. Rich people are out of touch. But you don't bite the hand that feeds you, not in this industry." Maya looked at him, at his expensive watch, his designer glasses, his carefully maintained neutrality. "The hand that feeds me pays minimum wage and expects me to be grateful for table scraps. Maybe it's time someone bit it." Preston walked away without another word. At the end of her shift, Maya counted her tips with mechanical precision. $218. She thought about Castellano's question. "That's more than you make in 3 months, right?" He'd been talking about the $9,000 tip he'd left, money that was already gone, split among the service staff, taxed, absorbed into the restaurant's complex tip-sharing system. She'd walk away with maybe $1,200 of it. $1,200. It would cover David's insulin for 3 months. It would not cover the ultrasound he needed to check for complications. It would not cover the specialist appointment his doctor had recommended. It would not cover the future that kept getting more expensive while her ability to pay for it stayed exactly the same. She stood up, straightened her uniform, and walked back out to the floor. Richard Castellano and his party were gone. The table was empty except for a small piece of paper folded in half. Maya walked over and picked it up. Inside, in neat handwriting, "You made a point. Let's talk. RC." Below that, a phone number. Maya stared at it for a long moment. Then she folded it back up, slipped it into her apron pocket, and went to greet her next table. She had no idea that this moment, this tiny piece of paper in her pocket, was about to unravel everything she thought she understood about money, power, and the increasingly thin line between them. Maya didn't call the number. Not that night. Not the next day. She told herself it was pride. She wasn't going to give Richard Castellano the satisfaction of thinking his patronizing gesture meant something. But if she was honest, it was also fear. Fear of what that conversation might become. Fear of being lectured again about her financial illiteracy by a man who'd never had to choose between groceries and medication. The story, however, didn't stay contained. By Wednesday morning, 3 days after the dinner, Maya's phone was buzzing constantly. Someone at the restaurant had recorded part of the confrontation, just the audio from a distance, but enough to catch her words about insulin costs and tax returns. It was on Twitter, then TikTok, then a local news blog picked it up with the headline, "Seattle Waitress Schools Billionaire on Real Economics." The video had 500,000 views. Maya discovered this while making coffee in her apartment in Greenwood, a neighborhood that had been affordable when she moved in 8 years ago, and now was rapidly pricing out everyone who worked for a living. Her landlord had already hinted at another rent increase come January, $75 more per month. Didn't sound like much until you multiplied it by 12 and realized it was nearly $1,000 she didn't have. "You're famous," David said, looking over her shoulder at her phone. He was 23, tall and too thin, with their mother's dark eyes and nervous energy. He'd been living with Maya since she was 16, and he was 11, Since their mother got sick, since their father decided parenting was too hard and disappeared to Portland with his girlfriend. I'm not famous, I'm a meme. Maya scrolled through the comments. Most were supportive, some were vicious, several accused her of being a socialist. One person had somehow found out where she worked and left a review calling her unprofessional and politically inappropriate. This guy wants to interview you. David pointed at a message request, some podcast called Real Talk Economics. So does this one and this one. Maya set her phone face down on the counter. I'm not doing interviews. Why not? You said what a lot of people are thinking. I said it to one entitled billionaire in a private dining room. I didn't say it to the internet. She poured coffee into 2 mugs, handed one to David. I need this to go away. It didn't go away. By Thursday, the Grand Harbor Club's manager, Dennis Kowalski, called Maya into his office before her shift. Dennis was 56, perpetually stressed, and had worked in high-end restaurants his entire adult life. He understood the unspoken rule. The customer was always right, especially when the customer had $8 billion. Maya, he gestured to the chair across from his desk. Sit. She sat. Dennis pulled up something on his computer, turned the screen toward her. It was the video. He let it play. Her voice, tinny through phone speakers, talking about insulin and tax returns. I assume you've seen this, he said. Yes. Richard Castellano is a regular client. He's brought business partners here, investors. He's recommended us to other high-net-worth individuals. Dennis folded his hands on the desk. He called me yesterday. Maya's stomach dropped. To complain. Actually, no. To say he wasn't offended. To say you made him think. Dennis paused. But 3 other clients have called. 2 of them are concerned about, let's call it the political atmosphere of the staff. One specifically said she doesn't want to worry about being judged by her server for having money. I didn't judge anyone for having money. Maya, you told a billionaire to look at his tax returns in front of 6 witnesses while serving him dinner. Dennis rubbed his temples. I'm not saying you were wrong. I'm saying you put me in an impossible position. Maya felt ice forming in her chest. Are you firing me? No, he sighed. But I'm asking you, I'm telling you, this can't happen again. We serve wealthy clients. That's the business model. You don't have to agree with their politics or their economics, but you do have to maintain professional distance. Can you do that? She wanted to say no. She wanted to quit right there, walk out, find some other restaurant where the customers were regular people with regular problems. But she needed this job. The tips here were triple what she'd make anywhere else. David's insulin cost $400 a month. Her rent was $1,900. She had $73 in savings. Yes, Maya said, I can do that. Dennis looked relieved. Good, thank you. Now go make some money. The shift was brutal. Not because of the work. Maya could do this job in her sleep, but because of the looks. The other servers were split between admiring her and resenting her. The kitchen staff thought she was a hero. The sommelier Preston, who'd worked here 14 years and dreamed of managing his own restaurant someday, told her she'd sabotaged the professional environment. And the customers, God, the customers. One woman in her 60s, dripping in diamonds, called Maya over and said, I saw that video of you, very brave. Then left a 3% tip. A younger couple, tech workers probably, left 25% and a note that said, solidarity. A middle-aged man in a suit asked if she was the socialist waitress and then requested a different server. Maya powered through, smile, recommend the special, refill the water, clear the plates, repeat. At the end of her shift, she counted her tips, $218, about average for a Thursday. Not good, not bad, just enough to keep the calculation running in her head. This much for rent, this much for utilities, this much for groceries, this much for David's meds, this much for the car payment, this much for... Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. But something, curiosity, exhaustion, the reckless feeling of having already burned one bridge this week, made her swipe to accept. "Hello?" "Maya Chen." The voice was unfamiliar. Male, professional. "Yes? My name is Adrian Pierce. I'm a journalist with the Seattle Times. I'm working on a piece about income inequality and the service industry, and I'd love to talk to you about your experience. Would you be willing to meet for coffee?" "No," Maya said immediately. "Thank you, but no. I understand you're probably getting a lot of requests, but this isn't a gotcha piece. I'm genuinely interested in the economics you were describing. The healthcare costs, the wage stagnation versus—" I said no. Maya ended the call. 3 more calls came in over the next hour. 2 more journalists. One person claiming to be from a non-profit advocacy group. Maya stopped answering. She drove home through late-night Seattle traffic, rain streaking the windshield, NPR playing quietly on the radio. The city looked beautiful from the highway, all those lights rising up the hills, Puget Sound dark and vast beyond. She'd lived here her whole life. She loved it here. She also couldn't afford it anymore, and hadn't been able to for years, and was just delaying the inevitable moment when the math would stop working entirely. David was still awake when she got home, sitting at their tiny kitchen table with his laptop and a pile of papers. "Tuition breakdown for spring," he said without looking up. "Classes, books, fees, total of $4,800. Maya set her bag down. "That's more than last semester. 2 of the classes I need are only offered as upper division now. More expensive." He looked up at her, and she saw the guilt in his eyes. The same guilt that had been there since he was 11 years old and learned what his insulin cost. "I can take fewer classes, stretch it out another year." "No, Maya, no. You're graduating on time. You're transferring to UW next fall like we planned. We'll figure it out." She said it with more confidence than she felt. "How?" David pushed the papers toward her. "We're already maxed out. You're already working 50 hours. I can get a job. You have a job. School, that's your job." Maya pulled out a chair, sat down across from him. "I'm serious, David. You're not dropping classes, and you're not delaying graduation to subsidize my shitty financial planning." "It's not shitty financial planning. It's expensive medication and a dead mother and a system designed to fuck people like us." His voice cracked. "You've given up everything for me." "I haven't given up anything. You're my brother. This is what family does." David looked down at his hands, at the insulin pump clipped to his belt. Maya had bought that pump 4 years ago, using every penny of their mother's tiny life insurance payout. It was supposed to make his life easier, help him manage his diabetes better. Instead, it had just added another recurring cost: sensors every 10 days, infusion sets, batteries, the insulin itself. "I saw the video," David said quietly. "The one from the restaurant. It's everywhere." Maya's stomach dropped. "What video?" "Someone recorded you. The confrontation with the billionaire. It's on Twitter, TikTok, everywhere. People are calling you a hero." He turned his laptop around, showed her the screen. There she was, her voice tinny through phone speakers, but clear enough. "You spent $47,000 tonight on dinner. I spent $47,000 over 3 years, keeping my mother comfortable while she died. Different kinds of money, different kinds of math." The video had been viewed 3 million times. Maya felt her world tilt. Oh God, there's more. David scrolled through comments. "This waitress gets it. Eat the rich. Someone give this woman a platform. Finally, someone calling out billionaire bullshit." He paused. "There's bad ones too. People saying you were unprofessional, that you should be fired, that you don't understand economics. I don't want this." "I know, but it's already happening." David closed the laptop. "Mom would have been proud, though. You know she would have." Maya felt tears stinging her eyes for the first time that night. Their mother, Christina Chen, had worked as a home health aide for 20 years. She'd taken care of elderly people, sick people, dying people. She'd changed bedpans and administered medications and held hands during final breaths. She'd done it for $13 an hour with no benefits until the cancer made it impossible to work anymore. Mom would have told me to keep my head down and not make trouble, Maya said. No. She would have told you to keep your head down to survive. But she would have been proud that you didn't. David reached across the table, took her hand. You said what she never could, what I never could, what millions of people can't, because they're too scared of losing what little they have. Maya squeezed his hand. I might have just lost my job. Then we'll figure it out, together. He stood up, moved to the kitchen. I'm making tea. You want some? Yeah. While David filled the kettle, Maya's phone continued to buzz. More notifications, more attention, more people who wanted something from her, her story, her anger, her validation of their own struggles. She opened one message from an unknown number. This is Adrian Pierce, Seattle Times. I'd love to talk to you about... She deleted it without reading the rest. Another message. Hi Maya, I run a podcast about workers' rights and I think your perspective... Deleted. A third. You're an inspiration. My daughter works 2 jobs and still can't afford... Maya set her phone face down on the table. She didn't want to be an inspiration. She didn't want to be a symbol. She just wanted to pay her bills and take care of her brother, and maybe someday have enough money saved that an unexpected expense wouldn't send her into a panic spiral. David set a mug of tea in front of her. Chamomile, the cheap kind from the grocery store, but warm and familiar. Thanks, she said. They sat in silence for a while, drinking tea, listening to the rain start up outside. Their apartment was small, a 1-bedroom that Maya had turned into a 2-bedroom by hanging a curtain across the living room to give David some privacy. The walls were thin enough that they could hear their neighbors arguing. The heater rattled, the fridge hummed too loudly, but it was theirs, and it was home, and it was all they could afford. What are you going to do? David asked eventually. Maya thought about Richard Castellano's note, still folded in her apron pocket. Let's talk. I don't know, she said. But that was a lie. She knew exactly what she was going to do. She was going to survive another day. Then another after that, because that's what people like her did. That's what people without safety nets and trust funds and stock portfolios did. They survived, and they hoped that survival would eventually turn into something more. David looked down at his hands. That billionaire was right, though, wasn't he? About the money. If you'd made different choices, invested differently, lived somewhere cheaper. Stop! Maya reached across the table, grabbed his hand. Don't do that. Don't let people like Richard Castellano make you think poverty is a personal failing. We didn't end up here because I'm bad with money. We ended up here because Mom got cancer in a country where healthcare can bankrupt you. And because your pancreas doesn't work in a country where insulin costs whatever they feel like charging. She squeezed his hand. The math doesn't work. It's not supposed to work. That's not our fault. They sat in silence for a moment. Outside, rain tapped against the window. I still have his number, Maya said suddenly. The billionaire. He left it for me. David looked up, surprised. Are you going to call him? I don't know. Maya pulled the folded piece of paper from her apron pocket, smoothed it out on the table. Richard Castellano's handwriting was precise, confident. Let's talk. What would you even say? David asked. That was the question, wasn't it? What would she say to a man who'd built an empire on venture capital and leveraged returns? What could she possibly offer him, except a window into a life he'd never have to live? Maya's phone buzzed again. Another unknown number. She silenced it. I'd ask him, she said slowly, what he thinks money is for, what it's supposed to do. Because from where I'm sitting, it's supposed to keep people alive and housed and educated, but the way it actually works, it does the opposite. It concentrates, it compounds, it rewards people who already have it and punishes people who need it. So you'd lecture him again. Maybe. Maya smiled faintly. Or maybe I'd listen. Maybe he knows something I don't. David looked skeptical. You think a billionaire's going to teach you how to survive on $32,000 a year? No, but maybe he'd learn something about what surviving costs. Maya picked up her phone, looked at the missed calls, the notifications, the small digital avalanche of attention she'd never asked for. Then she opened a new message, typed in Richard Castellano's number, and stared at the blank text field for a long moment. Finally she typed, "This is Maya Chen. You said we should talk. I'm listening." She hit send before she could change her mind. The response came 30 seconds later. "Tomorrow, 2 p.m. My office. I'll send the address." Maya stared at the screen, her heart beating faster than it should. "What did you do?" David asked. "I have no idea," Maya said, but she was going to find out. Castellano Ventures occupied the entire 43rd floor of the Columbia Tower, Seattle's tallest building. Maya had walked past it 1,000 times, a black glass spike punching up into the grey sky, but she'd never been inside. The lobby alone was intimidating, all marble and chrome, security guards in suits, a directory listing companies she'd only heard about in news headlines. The elevator was glass-walled, offering a view of the city shrinking below as she rose. Maya's reflection looked small and out of place in her only business-casual outfit. Black pants from Target, a white blouse she'd ironed twice. She was 15 minutes early. She'd left the house 90 minutes early, terrified of being late, of giving Castellano any reason to dismiss her as unprofessional. The elevator opened directly into Castellano Ventures, floor-to-ceiling windows, modern furniture, a receptionist who looked like she'd stepped out of a fashion magazine. "Maya Chen," Maya said. "I have a 2 o'clock with Mr. Castellano." The receptionist smiled, checked her computer. "Of course, he's expecting you. 3rd door on the left." Maya walked down a corridor, lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her entire apartment. The 3rd door was open. Inside, Richard Castellano sat behind a massive desk, typing on a laptop. He looked up when she appeared. "Maya, come in. Close the door." She did. "Sit." He gestured to one of the chairs facing his desk. "Coffee, water." "I'm fine, thank you." Castellano closed his laptop, folded his hands, and looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "I've been thinking about what you said, about different kinds of money, different kinds of math." Maya said nothing, waiting. "I want to show you something." He turned his monitor toward her. On the screen, a spreadsheet. Rows and rows of numbers. "This is a simplified version of my portfolio. Stocks, bonds, real estate, private equity. Do you know how much it's worth?" I saw the Forbes estimate. 8.3 billion. That's conservative. It's closer to 9. He paused. "Do you know how much of that I earned through a salary, through trading hours for money?" Maya shook her head. 43 million, total, over my entire career. Everything else, the other 8.95 billion, that's capital gains, returns on investments, money making money. He leaned back. "You said I don't understand the cost of living. You're right. I haven't worried about rent in 20 years. I haven't worried about healthcare or grocery prices or whether I can afford to fix my car. That's your reality, not mine." "Then why am I here?" "Because I want to understand it." Castellano pulled up a different file, turned the screen again. "After you left that night, I did something I've never done before. I built a budget, not for me, for you, based on what you told me and what I could research about Seattle cost of living, median service industry income, healthcare expenses." He pointed at the screen. "This is what I came up with. Is it accurate?" Maya looked at the spreadsheet. He'd broken it down by month, Rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, insurance, David's medical expenses, student loans. The numbers were close, uncomfortably close. "Where did you get this information?" she asked. "Public databases, labor statistics, healthcare pricing data, some assumptions." He pulled the screen back. "According to this model, you have approximately negative $200 per month, meaning you're going into debt just by existing. That's about right. How do you survive that?" "Credit cards. Sometimes I pick up an extra shift. Sometimes my brother skips meals so I can make rent. Sometimes we just hope nothing breaks. No car trouble, no medical emergency, no—" Maya stopped. "You didn't bring me here to look at a spreadsheet." "No." Castellano stood, walked to the window. Seattle spread out below them. "All those buildings and lives and calculations. I brought you here because you challenged something I've believed for my entire adult life, that wealth is a meritocracy, that people who work hard and make smart decisions succeed, that poverty is, not always but often, a result of poor choices." He turned to face her. "You've worked hard, for 12 years. You've made sacrifices most people couldn't imagine, and you're still poor. That contradiction bothers me." "It should. I want to propose something." Castellano walked back to his desk, pulled out a document. "An experiment. I give you $100,000, no strings. You use it however you think best, to pay off debt, invest, save, whatever. And we document what happens, how it changes your life, whether it proves your theory or mine." Maya stared at him. "Is this a joke?" "No." "You want to give me $100,000? "Yes." "Why?" "Because I want to know if I'm wrong." Castellano's voice was serious, almost intense. "You said the system is designed to punish people who need money and reward people who have it. I want to test that. If you're right, then 100,000 should be life-changing. It should break the cycle. If I'm right, if the problem really is financial literacy and decision-making, then we'll see that too." Maya felt anger flaring in her chest. "This isn't a game. My life isn't a research project." "I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, this sounds like a billionaire playing God, testing whether the poor person knows how to handle money, setting up some kind of patronizing social experiment." "That's fair." Castellano didn't look away. "But consider the alternative. You go back to your life. You keep working 50 hours a week, keep choosing between your rent and your brother's medication, keep drowning in a system that doesn't care whether you survive. Or you take the money, you use it, you prove me right or prove me wrong, but either way, you get a chance. A chance you control. A chance you didn't have yesterday." Maya stood up. "I need to think about this." "Of course." Castellano handed her the document. "This is the offer in writing, $100,000 transferred to an account of your choosing. The only condition is that you document your decisions and meet with me quarterly to discuss them. No editorial control, no veto power. Your money, your choices. I just want to understand." Maya took the document but didn't look at it. "And if I say no, then you say no. The offer expires in 1 week. After that, I move on to other projects and you move on with your life." She folded the document, slipped it into her bag. "I'm not going to be your poverty exhibit. I'm not asking you to be." "Yes, you are. That's exactly what this is." Maya walked to the door, then turned back. "You want to understand money? Real money? The kind people like me deal with? Then understand this. Every decision I make is a calculation of survival. Every dollar I spend is weighed against 10 other needs. That 100,000 you're offering, that's not life-changing money for you. That's walking around money, a rounding error. But for me, it's the difference between having a future and just enduring." She opened the door. So, yes, I'll think about it, but don't pretend this is about learning. This is about you feeling better about how the world works. She left before he could respond. The elevator ride down felt longer than the ride up. Maya's hands were shaking, her mind was racing. $100,000, enough to pay off her mother's remaining medical debt. Enough to cover David's tuition. Enough to buy a car that didn't sound like it was dying. Enough to breathe. She made it to the street before she had to stop, lean against the building, close her eyes. Her phone rang. David. "Hey," she answered. "How did it go?" "I don't know." Maya looked up at the Columbia Tower, all that glass and steel reaching into the clouds. "He offered me money." "How much?" "A lot." Silence on the other end. Then, "Are you going to take it?" "I don't know," Maya said again. She walked to a coffee shop, ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, and sat by the window reading the document Castellano had given her. It was straightforward. No tricks, no hidden clauses. Just an agreement that she'd accept the money and track how she used it. Her phone buzzed constantly. More interview requests. More people wanting her story. Someone had started a GoFundMe in her name. She hadn't authorized it, didn't want it, but it was up to $12,000 from strangers who'd seen the video. Maya ignored all of it and Googled Richard Castellano. The internet had a lot to say about him. Self-made billionaire, mostly true, though his parents had paid for Stanford. Founded his first company at 26. Sold it at 30 for $100 million. Built a venture capital empire from there. Invested in tech startups, biotech, real estate. Divorced once. 2 kids he barely saw. Reputation for being brilliant, ruthless, and occasionally cruel. Several articles about his business philosophy. Maximize efficiency. Eliminate sentiment. Let the market decide who wins. There was a video from a conference where he'd spoken about wealth inequality. His position, the wealth gap, was a natural outcome of capitalism, and attempting to redistribute resources would only create inefficiency. "The market rewards competence," he'd said. "If you want more money, create more value." Maya closed her laptop. She thought about her mother, working 2 jobs before she got sick. Creating value, being competent, dying anyway because the market decided her life wasn't worth the cost of treatment. She thought about David, brilliant and kind, and terrified that his existence was a burden. She thought about every person she'd ever served at the Grand Harbor Club, people who'd never had to choose between eating and healing. Never had to do math in their head at the pharmacy counter. Never had to apologize for being poor. And she thought about Richard Castellano, sitting in his office 43 floors above the city, trying to understand why $100,000 would change her life. He couldn't understand. Not really. You couldn't explain water to someone who'd never been thirsty. But maybe she could show him. Maya pulled out her phone, opened her messages and typed, "I'll take the money, on one condition. You spend 1 month living on my budget. Same income, same expenses, same choices. You want to understand different kinds of money? Prove it." She stared at the message for a long moment, then hit send. The response came 5 minutes later, "Deal." Maya stared at the single word on her screen. She'd just made an agreement with a billionaire. She had no idea if she'd won or lost. The money hit Maya's account on a Tuesday morning. She was at the restaurant prepping for lunch service when her phone buzzed with the bank notification. Her checking account balance, which had been $73, was now $100,073. She had to sit down. Marco found her in the dry storage room, staring at her phone. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know." Maya looked up at him. "I think I just made either the best decision of my life or the worst." The deal with Castellano had taken a week to finalize. His lawyers had drawn up contracts. Maya had insisted on her own terms, modest ones because she couldn't afford a lawyer, mostly clarifications that the money was hers, no clawback clauses, no control over her choices, and her condition: Castellano would spend 30 days living on her budget. He'd agreed, to her surprise. More than agreed, he'd seemed genuinely interested. "I want to understand the math," he'd told her during their second meeting. "You kept saying the math doesn't work. Show me." So Maya had broken down her monthly finances: $1,900 for rent, $400 for David's insulin, $300 for other medications and healthcare, $200 for utilities, $400 for groceries, $300 for transportation, $100 for phone and internet, $200 for minimum payments on credit cards. Total, $3,800. Her income, averaged over the year, was around $3,200. "You're negative $600 a month," Castellano had said, looking at the numbers. "Sometimes more. Sometimes a little less if I get good tips." "How do you survive?" "I don't know. I just keep going and hope nothing catastrophic happens." Now, sitting in the storage room with $100,000 in her account, Maya felt the weight of possibility pressing down on her. She could do anything: pay off debt, save, invest, quit her job, go back to school, move to a cheaper city. The options were paralyzing. She thought about what Castellano had said. If the problem really is financial literacy and decision-making, we'll see that too. He was still testing her, still waiting to see if she'd prove his theory that poor people were poor because they made bad choices. Maya pulled out a notebook and started writing. First priority: David's security. She transferred $15,000 to a separate savings account designated for his medical expenses and tuition. That would cover 2 years of community college and insulin without her having to panic every month. Second, debt. She had $11,000 in credit card debt, mostly from her mother's funeral expenses and various emergencies over the years. She paid it off entirely, gone. The psychological relief was immediate and overwhelming. Third, her car. The transmission was failing. She'd been nursing it along, terrified of the day it would die completely. She scheduled a repair, paid cash. Another $1,800. But now she didn't have to worry about breaking down on the way to work. Fourth, medical care. Maya hadn't been to a dentist in 3 years, hadn't had a physical in 4. She made appointments, paid the co-pays without flinching. The money was disappearing fast, but strategically. By the end of the first week, she'd spent $43,000, and for the first time in her adult life, she felt like she could breathe. Meanwhile, Castellano's experiment was going differently than either of them had expected. She met him on day 8 at a Denny's in Northgate. His choice, because it was cheap. He looked exhausted. "I've been living on your budget for 8 days, he said, stirring coffee he'd made at home and brought in a thermos because buying coffee was too expensive. "I want to quit." Maya raised an eyebrow. 8 days. "I know." He laughed, but it sounded hollow. "I know. That's the point, right? That's what you've been trying to tell me." What happened? Castellano pulled out his phone, showed her a budgeting app he'd downloaded. "I set my income to match yours, $2,600 a month. I allocated it exactly the way you showed me: rent, utilities, groceries, transportation, healthcare, and then I tried to live. And I failed immediately. I needed gas for my car, except I don't have a car anymore. I sold it because I couldn't afford the insurance, so I took the bus. But the bus took 3 times as long, which meant I was late to a meeting. I grabbed coffee on the way because I was exhausted, $5, and realized that $5 was an hour and a half of work at minimum wage. I had dinner with my kids. I'm still allowed to see my kids, we decided, and I couldn't order what I wanted because it was too expensive. My son asked why I got water instead of wine. I told him I was doing an experiment. He said, "What kind of experiment?" I didn't know how to explain it. Maya sipped her own coffee, watching him. There was something different about Castellano. The polished confidence he'd carried at the restaurant was gone. He looked rumpled, tired, human. "Tell me about day 3, Maya said. "Day 3. Castellano laughed bitterly. "Day 3, I had a toothache. Just a minor one, probably nothing, but I couldn't afford to go to the dentist, not on this budget, so I took some ibuprofen and hoped it would go away. It didn't. By day 4, the pain was constant. By day 5, I was lying awake at night doing the math. Emergency dental work would cost at least $300. That was half my grocery budget for the month. If I paid for the dentist, I wouldn't be able to eat properly. If I didn't pay for the dentist, the problem would get worse, probably cost more later. He paused. I've never had to make that calculation before. Health versus hunger. It paralyzed me. What did you do? I called my regular dentist, explained I was doing an experiment. He saw me for free, as a favor, fixed the problem in 20 minutes. Castellano met her eyes, and that's when I understood the real trap. I could cheat. I have connections, resources, a safety net. If something goes truly wrong, I can just opt out. But you can't. When you have a toothache, you take the ibuprofen and hope. When your car breaks down, you take the bus and lose hours of your life. When your brother needs insulin, you figure it out or he dies. There's no opt-out. There's no safety net. There's just survival or failure. Maya felt something loosen in her chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but recognition. He was starting to see it. Day 6, Castellano continued. I went to the grocery store. Took me 2 hours because I had to compare prices on everything. Store brand versus name brand. Meat that's about to expire versus fresh. I bought the expired meat, saved $4, took it home, cooked it immediately, got food poisoning anyway. Spent the next day vomiting, unable to work, unable to do anything. Lost a day of productivity. And I realized that being poor is expensive. You buy the cheap shoes that fall apart in 6 months instead of the good shoes that last 5 years. You buy the cheap meat that makes you sick. You pay overdraft fees because you miscalculated by $3. You pay late fees because you had to choose which bill to pay first. The system charges you extra for having no money. Welcome to the mathematics of poverty, Maya said quietly. I'm sorry. The words came out raw, unpolished. I'm sorry for what I said at the restaurant, for implying that your situation was your fault, for thinking wealth was just a matter of smart choices and hard work. I was wrong. Maya studied him across the table. A month ago, she would have been satisfied with this apology. She would have taken it as validation, as victory. But now, sitting here with $100,000 in her bank account and a life that was already changing because of it, she felt something more complicated. The worst part, Castellano continued, isn't the deprivation. It's the constant calculation. Every single decision is a negotiation. Do I buy the cheaper bread or the bread that's actually food? Do I fill up the gas tank or put in $10 and hope it lasts? Do I pay the electricity bill on time or wait until they send a shut-off notice? I've been doing this for 8 days and I'm already exhausted. You've been doing it for 12 years. Longer, Maya said quietly. My whole life, really. It's just been worse since my mum got sick. She pulled out her own phone, showed him a photo. Her mother, Christina, in a hospital bed 2 months before she died. Thin and pale but smiling, her hand clasped in Maya's. In the background of the photo, barely visible, was a medical bill on the nightstand. Maya knew that bill by heart, $47,236, for 6 weeks of hospitalization, for treatment that didn't work, for a private room because the shared rooms were full, for medications that bought time but not cure. That's the 47,000 I was talking about, Maya said. Not all at once. Spread over 3 years of treatments and hospitalizations and experimental therapies that insurance wouldn't cover. We sold everything we had. Her car, her jewelry, the furniture. We maxed out credit cards. We did payment plans. And she still died, and I still owe money to collectors who call me on her birthday. Castellano stared at the photo. I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't pay bills. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't change the fact that in the richest country in the world, people die because they can't afford to live. Maya put her phone away. You want to know what poverty really is? It's watching your mother ration her pain medication because she's worried about the cost. It's listening to your little brother apologize for existing because his body doesn't work right, and that's expensive. It's knowing that you're one medical emergency away from complete collapse, and there's nothing you can do about it except hope you get lucky. And the Denny's felt very quiet suddenly. The conversations around them seemed distant, muffled. I don't know how to fix this, Castellano said. The system, I mean. It's too big, too entrenched. You can't fix it alone, but you can stop pretending it's not broken. You can stop voting for policies that protect your wealth at everyone else's expense. You can stop treating poverty like a character flaw. Maya leaned forward, and you can remember this feeling, this constant calculation, this exhaustion, this fear. When you go back to your life, when you're in boardrooms making decisions about wages and benefits and health care, remember what 8 days felt like. Imagine doing it for 12 years, for 20, for your entire life. Castellano set down his coffee. I owe you an apology. For what? For thinking poverty was a choice? For believing that people who work hard automatically succeed? He stopped, searching for words. For not understanding that the system isn't neutral. It's designed to punish people for being poor. Every fee, every interest rate, every choice between healthcare and rent. It's all mechanisms that extract wealth from people who don't have it and transfer it upward. Maya felt something complicated moving in her chest. Not quite forgiveness, but acknowledgement. You're learning. I'm learning that I was an asshole. He smiled faintly. That night at the restaurant, when I said you don't understand money, I meant it as a fundamental truth. I thought I'd discovered something profound. But you were right. I don't understand money, not the kind that matters. I understand abstractions, numbers on a screen. But I don't understand money as life or death, money as dignity. Money is the difference between surviving and drowning. So what are you going to do about it? The question hung between them. Castellano looked out the window at the parking lot, the strip malls, the grey Seattle sky. I don't know. I can't fix the system. I'm part of the problem. I've built my entire fortune on the mechanisms that create inequality, but I can... He paused. I can change how I participate, how I invest, what I fund, who I hire. It's not enough, but it's something. Is it? Maya asked, and she wasn't trying to be cruel, just honest. Or is this just you feeling guilty for a month and then going back to your life? I don't know, Castellano admitted. Ask me in a year. They sat in silence for a moment. Around them, Denny's hummed with conversations, the clink of silverware, someone's phone ringing. How's the money treating you? Castellano asked. The 100,000. Maya pulled out her own notebook, showed him her spending breakdown. I paid off debt, secured David's future, fixed my car, started seeing doctors again, and I put 30,000 into a high-yield savings account as an emergency fund. That's smart. It's survival. There's a difference. Maya closed the notebook. But it's working. For the first time in years, I'm not calculating every decision against disaster. I can buy groceries without counting. I can say yes when David asks if we can order pizza. I can think about the future instead of just enduring the present. Is it life-changing? Yes, and that's the problem. Maya leaned forward. Because I didn't do anything to deserve this. I didn't work harder or make smarter choices. You just decided to give me money and everything got better, which proves exactly what I told you. The problem isn't personal failure, it's systemic design. $100,000 changed my life because the system is broken, not because I'm suddenly competent. Castellano nodded slowly. You're right. I know I'm right. The question is whether you actually believe it, or whether you're just humoring me because you feel guilty. Can't it be both? Maya smiled despite herself. I guess it can. Her phone buzzed. A text from David. Interview went well. Think I got the internship. Maya's chest swelled with pride. David had applied for a summer internship at a biotech company, something he never would have risked if he'd been worried about income. The security of knowing his medical expenses were covered had freed him to take chances. That's because of you, she told Castellano. You gave me room to give him room. That cascades. So the experiment worked. The experiment proved that money works, that having resources creates opportunities, that security enables risk. Maya stood, gathered her things. But it also proved that I shouldn't have needed a billionaire's charity to access those things. Healthcare and education and housing shouldn't be luxuries, they should be baseline. The fact that $100,000 is life-changing for me and irrelevant to you, that's not natural economics, that's designed inequality. Castellano stood too. I'm going to keep doing this, the budget experiment, for the full month, even though it's killing me. Why? Because I told you I would, and because, he hesitated, because I think I need to understand what I've been insulated from. If I'm going to change anything, I need to actually know what I'm changing. They walked out together into the parking lot, into the rain that was always threatening in Seattle. Thank you, Maya said, for the money, for listening, for trying. Thank you for not letting me stay comfortable. Maya drove home thinking about systems and cycles and the strange mathematics of dignity. She thought about how $100,000 had changed everything and nothing. She was still Maya Chen, still a waitress, still living in a city that was pricing her out. But now she had breathing room. Now she had options. Now she could imagine a future that wasn't just survival. David was home when she arrived, sitting at the table with his laptop and a smile she hadn't seen in months. I got it, he said. The internship. Paid. $15 an hour. Maya hugged him so hard he laughed. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us. David pulled back, looked at her seriously. You did this. You fought for this. I got lucky. No, you made a choice. You stood up to a billionaire and told him the truth, and you were right, and he listened. That's not luck. That's courage. Maya wasn't sure she agreed, but she let it stand. Over the next 3 weeks, Castellano finished his budget experiment. He lost 12 pounds from eating cheaper food. He developed a stress rash from constantly calculating expenses. He missed his kids' soccer game because the bus schedule didn't align. He got a parking ticket he couldn't afford and had to choose between paying it or buying groceries. On day 30, they met again. Same Denny's, same booth. I made it, Castellano said. He looked different, tired, humbled. Congratulations, Maya said, and meant it. I have a proposal. He pulled out a folder, thick with documents. I've been thinking about what you said, about systems. I can't fix capitalism, but I can redirect some capital. So I'm starting a fund. $50 million initial investment, focused on closing the gaps, healthcare access, education costs, living wages. I want you to help me run it. Maya stared at him. What? You understand the problems in ways I never will. You know what people actually need. I want you to help decide where the money goes, not as a figurehead, as a partner. I'm a waitress. You're someone who understands what money means to people who need it. That's more valuable than an MBA. Castellano slid the folder toward her. Salary is $120,000 a year, full benefits. You'd work out of my office, coordinate with non-profits and social enterprises, evaluate proposals, make funding decisions. What do you say? Maya opened the folder, saw the job description, the salary breakdown, the benefits package. It was everything she'd never allowed herself to imagine. "I say yes," she whispered. 3 months later, Maya gave her notice at the Grand Harbour Club. Dennis was sorry to see her go. Preston made a snide comment about selling out. The kitchen staff threw her a party. On her last shift, she served a table of tech executives celebrating a funding round, $22,000 for dinner. She smiled and recommended the wine and brought them their food. But when she cleared the plates, she didn't see customers anymore. She saw people playing a game with rules they'd never questioned. She saw a system that rewarded them for already winning. One of the executives called her over. "You're that waitress, aren't you? From the video." Maya tensed. Yes. That was something. He pulled out his phone, showed her the video, now at 2 million views. "You really put Castellano in his place. Good for you. Thank you. Although," he paused, grinning, "you know he's actually a pretty good guy, right? My company wouldn't exist without his initial funding. He took a risk on us when nobody else would." Maya looked at the man, mid-30s, expensive watch, easy confidence of someone who'd never had to choose between medicine and rent. "I'm sure he did," she said carefully. "But taking risks with money you can afford to lose isn't the same as taking risks with money you need to survive." The executive blinked, his grin fading. "I guess that's true." "Enjoy your meal," Maya said, and walked away. In the kitchen, Ramon was plating desserts. He looked up when Maya entered. "Last night, huh?" he said. "Last night. You gonna miss it." Maya looked around the kitchen. The heat, the noise, the controlled chaos. She'd spent 12 years in spaces like this, learning the rhythm of service, the language of orders, the small dignities of doing difficult work well. "Parts of it," she said honestly. "I'll miss the people, the adrenaline of a busy Friday night, the satisfaction of a table that leaves happy." She paused. "I won't miss the calculations, figuring out if I can afford to eat the shift meal or if I should save it for David, pretending I'm fine when customers complain about a $2 upcharge while wearing watches that cost more than my car." Ramon nodded. "You earned this, you know. The new job. Whatever comes next. You earned it." "Did I? Or did I just get lucky that a billionaire felt guilty? Both can be true." He slid a dessert across the counter, chocolate torte, Maya's favorite. "On the house, for your last shift." Maya accepted it, felt tears stinging her eyes. "Thanks, Ramon. Go change the world," he said, "or at least make it suck a little less for people like us." On her final night at the restaurant, Maya comps the meal of a young couple who saved for months to celebrate their anniversary, choosing to give them the kindness she was never given. It becomes her quiet goodbye to a life defined by scarcity. She leaves the job knowing her next step, working with a wealthy benefactor, is imperfect but necessary. With resources on one side and lived experience on the other, she believes real change might be possible, even if the system itself remains broken. That night, packing uniforms with David, Maya reflects on survival, fear, and hope. She knows money alone won't fix inequality, but it can be a beginning. After 12 years of calculating survival, she is finally learning to calculate change and to imagine a future that offers more than just getting by.